Today, user is the weakest link. Tomorrow, AI agents will be your weakest link. Imagine they're getting hijacked and these agents are running amok in your enterprises. The risk is much, much higher. Those are the hard problems we are solving in this world of AI.
Mr. Jay Chaudhry is an accomplished entrepreneur, having founded most recently Zscaler. He founded a series of groundbreaking technology companies, and today the cloud security service by Zscaler is used by over 45 million users around the world. Jay has been recipient of various awards, including Entrepreneur of the Year awards from E&Y. So talk to us specifically about how AI now is changing the cyber threat landscape.
Imagine in case of war, the banks get shut out, electricity gets shut out, and trains get shut out. So countries are trying to do this kind of spying, putting malware in the infrastructure. What we do in cyber is a race with bad guys. You just have to stay ahead of it.
But talk to us about how you're seeing India's own cyber talent and capabilities evolve.
I hear a lot about models being built in India. There's no reason the same Indians who are writing all the great code in the US, can't they write the same thing in India? It's great that this global summit being held in India, it's drawing attention for people and companies who really have investment opportunities.
Given you've grown up in Himachal, favorite movies that you still like to, watch?
I do like old-time movies. Sholay and Kabhi Kabhi. Enjoyed them during my college days. I still like them.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the AI Futures podcast series that we're doing in the run-up to the India AI Summit, India AI Impact Summit 2026. This series brings you the top AI thinkers and leaders from around the world, from the corporate world, from the policy government world, as well as the academic and research worlds. And today I am proud and honored to have with us Mr. Jay Chaudhry. It's my honor today to have you on the podcast. Jay, welcome.
Mr. Suri, thank you for the generous introduction. It's an honor to be here with you.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. I think you've inspired a lot of entrepreneurs, of course, in the US and also in India, having come from, I think as from I've heard from various conversations of yours, from very humble beginnings in a village in Himachal. So I want to start off and spend a few minutes, of course, on your entrepreneur journey. The world of entrepreneurship in India has changed. I think when you were growing up, entrepreneurship was probably not even a word in the lexicon of students in India. Today, as I'm sure you know, I know you keep coming to India as well. Today, as you know, entrepreneurship is a key buzzword. College students, whether they're in engineering or other disciplines, look at entrepreneurship as a very viable discipline or an option to pursue. And then now, of course, AI. AI is also transforming, what the next generation of entrepreneurs might look like, given that so much of what Indian software founders might have started over the last 2-3 decades, they'll also have to reimagine what that next wave of entrepreneurship would look like. So my first question is around those waves of entrepreneurship from your personal perspective, how it was to start an entrepreneurship journey back then, how you've seen it evolve, and what you expect for entrepreneurs in the future, what entrepreneurship will look like.
So first of all, there will always be opportunity to solve the next level of problems. They just change. I like to say technology incrementally evolves all the time. You expect technology to get better. But every decade or 2 decades, there's a step function change. I call them mega waves. There's a mega wave of internet in the 90s. Then year 2000, there's a wave of cloud and mobility. Those waves create opportunities for entrepreneurs to start new things because incumbents are disrupted in that process. A new young company can come around. And all the startups are done about actually new disruptive technology. Okay, Secure IT, the very first security services company, and others too. and Zscaler, a very fast company, cloud native security in the cloud and the like. So looking for step function technologies is good. I like to call the gigawave because it's one of the biggest waves that's changing how everything is done. And it's none of us have a crystal ball to figure out the real timing. But I think if you start too early, you may kind of start because the market is not ready. If you start too late, it may be too late for you. So figuring out the right time, right area of focus for success is important. And for that, you need to make sure, do you have the right core competencies to succeed in that area? Those are some of the things I've used. I'm fortunate. I've been lucky product of American Dream. I never had a big game plan to really start companies. Okay. Coming from my simple background, I just learned three things from my parents: honesty, integrity, and hard work. So in many ways, coming from a simple background with much financial strength is actually a positive thing. Adversity is wonderful. It makes you think and do things right. In fact, if I may make a comment, Indians who come to the US as first generation, they're always going the extra mile, working hard. The next generation in India becomes a little bit less hungry, right? So I like adversity, people who come from simple background. I look for immigrants because they are hungry, they want to get things done. And for entrepreneurship, hunger and hustle are critical. Everything else follows it.
No, absolutely. I think the point you make about the hunger and the drive and the motivation to prove yourself and to make it, there's no replacement for that. As someone who left home, much like you did, I think in early days for high school and then college, I've noticed that. And that doesn't end. I think, as you rightly said, it's sometimes the first generation that matters. It could have happened in the 60s, 70s, 90s, or the 2020s. But I think that hunger, drive is often critical, especially for entrepreneurs, because I think as you've founded now multiple successful companies. It's you live in uncertain times as an entrepreneur, and so there has to be a real core, driver inside of you. No one else can motivate you.
Yes, but also, we all get inspiration from each other. If you want to be successful, you want to hang around people who have the passion and drive. Okay. And in fact, the number one thing we look for when we hire people in our companies, are they passionate and driven? Are they looking for a job, or they want to make a difference in life? And that's what we look for. In fact, I often think that many times people do startups to get rich quick. That's a mistake. You rarely get rich quickly. Maybe there's one example like that, and there are 600 examples that didn't happen. So if you develop passion that I really want to solve this challenge, solve this problem, then you have fun at it, because human beings like challenges. Okay. The same thing can be viewed as a challenge you want to overcome, or it could be viewed as, man, such a hurdle. It's a perspective, right? Human mind is so powerful. You put it to use in a positive fashion, things happen.
No, that's right. Absolutely. So I want to now start and shift maybe to the world of cybersecurity that you've now inhabited. I think one can argue for over, I guess, almost 3 decades now. And the world has evolved. The cybersecurity world has evolved rapidly since the early days of the internet, when you started off with some of your earliest companies that you founded. And now I believe Zscaler has been public for many years. The Zscaler journey has also now been over a decade for you, I think. So talk to us about how you are seeing that world evolve. Of course, many people are now coming to the world of AI. Cyber has become a big topic of discussion even for governments now. It wasn't so maybe a decade or two ago. How have you seen that space evolve? How would you, for someone who's not from that field, Mr. Chaudhry, characterize the evolution of that field, and what have been some of the key, let's say, trends or developments?
So early on in late 90s, when cyber attack happened, is like defacing a website and the like. is to prove that I can do it kind of stuff. Okay, that was largely the situation. But as time has evolved, more and more business is being done on the internet, being done online. The bad guys want to get a piece of action without working hard. Wherever money goes, transaction goes, there'll be bad guys to follow it. So I'm not surprised at all that cyber attacks are happening because there's more and more business online, right? So that's one part of it. The second part is also nation states are driven by two things. One, they want intellectual property, for example. Can I get IP of jet engines from country A so country B can use it? Can I get vaccine for COVID, for the formula for it? That becomes a reason. And that's one part. The second part ends up being having advantage on the military side of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything is driven online. Everything is connected to the internet. Okay. Think of all the critical infrastructure. 2 or 3 years ago, US had an incident where this company called Colonial Pipeline that provided gas to households. It got compromised. Once it got compromised, they turned off the system. They encrypted the data. System could no longer work. Now, the millions of home users that are impacted by it. Imagine in case of war, the banks get shut out, electricity gets shut out, and trains get shut out. That could have massive impact on it. So countries are trying to do this kind of spying, so they're actually putting malware in the infrastructure out there. So we have to be mindful. There was a survey a few months ago done with CEOs of some of the large businesses. And the question asked, well, what is the number one business risk you see? Cyber was cited as number one business risk out there. And I'm not surprised. We're seeing businesses get shutting down. You saw this news that's widely covered globally and especially in India. JLR, Jaguar Land Rover.
Yes.
Shut down. So cyber has to be taken seriously.
Yeah, for months. Yeah, of course. I think their most recent quarter results, cyber and the cyber attack that they suffered, and because of which their production lines were down for so long, was the reason cited as why they were in the red.
Indeed.
Right? And I think, as you're rightly saying, it's no longer to be left to imagination. I think there have been several incidents, as you mentioned, Colonial Pipeline, where you've seen the visuals of the cars lined up because of the disruption to the oil pipelines in northeastern US. I think the wars in Europe, you've seen cyber be a big element. In Operation Sindoor, in the case of India, Pakistan, cyber has been an element. I think so. No longer, I think, is it a piece that people have to imagine or governments have to imagine what it would look like. I think it has started to show itself as an emerging domain for geopolitics and warfare. So we're of course talking about the victims or those being attacked or those being compromised, either IP being compromised or critical infrastructure being compromised, etc. But talked about the other side, the attackers in this case. And the reason I ask this is, as I was mentioning to you earlier, I'd written a book called The Great Tech Game a few years ago. And one of the pieces in which I described in that was that the nature of attackers is changing very rapidly as well. The actors that, if, for example, for the Indian government, if terrorism has been a concern, then traditionally you're tracking certain terrorist groups, right? In the case of India, on its northwestern border. So you know the names of those terrorist groups, you know the members, you know their modus operandi, etc. So that's what your national security establishment is focused on. But now in the case of cyber, of course, governments are on the other side maybe, but there's a whole set of non-state actors again on the other side who are probably changing form and name and modes of operation very quickly. So talk to us about the attackers and what you can share about the nature and characteristics of those actors.
So it's very true that the physical world, finding spies and terrorists, you could track them. Physically, they can't disappear. In the cyber world, these groups can come and go. Someone is sitting in one country out there. They can access over the internet through VPN. They could be sitting in your company. Lots of computers, laptops are infected with malware. It's like spies sitting on your laptop. And this spy can get instruction from a command and control site somewhere in some country that says, oh, for the next 2 hours, record every keystroke of this laptop and send them to me on every hourly boundary. Now, why do they want to do that? Because they may want to shift through it and find your passwords and credentials are being typed up. So they pick up those things. Once they steal the credentials, they could try to go to your bank account or try to do something else. So these guys do have actually names. Okay, there are lots of hacker group names out there. In fact, my security research team that Zscaler has, we call it Threat Labs, they actually track 2 or 3 Pakistani hacker groups who are acting during Operation Sindoor, okay, trying to lure people by providing some of the documents that are fake and say, here is how we're going to show you the information about the next blackout drill or some other information coming from the government. So tracking them gets hard, but there are ways to track them. I mean, we do see communication. I mean, they can change things around, but we know where they're coming from, where they're headed. The problem is they can jump from one source to second and hide their identities. But there are fingerprints of the code as well. When we see the kind of attack that's happening, you can link back to the approach they're taking to a certain hacker group as well. But you can have these groups in 2 buckets. One is, as you said, non-state actors. Number one reason for them is money. Okay, they want money. In fact, they have set up as a service business. They create certain tools. Those tools can be made available for other hacker groups and say, if you use these tools, whatever money you get from ransomware, half comes to me and half goes to you. Okay. So every group doesn't have to create tools on their own. And state actors are obviously very sophisticated. And it's getting worse and worse. In the past couple of years, North Korea has been very active finding people who actually get a job as contractors or employees in the US with some of these large companies. Okay, so they're hired as if they know software development, all that stuff. And then they work there very quietly like good engineers for a year. Then they start planting special code to really set up some bad stuff out there. So figuring out those people gets pretty hard. So we end up looking for unusual behavior, anomalous behavior. So it's what we do in cyber is a race with bad guys. You just have to stay ahead of them.
Yeah, which is, a completely different ball game, as you're saying, unlike the traditional physical world where the terrorists or, whoever was your adversary was much easier to maybe identify or had different geographical locations. Here, as you're mentioning, they're sitting within your laptop, within your companies, within your software. So the game has gotten much harder.
But companies like Zscaler, we are getting faster and faster too. So the issue is not that these guys know more. No, it's true that they're small groups. They're very passionate. These guys can work day and night. It's their hobby in some ways too. But we have very smart people. I think that the thing I worry about is not that we don't have the solution. The thing I worry about is when we work with large organizations, large private companies or public companies or government organizations. The larger the organization, the more inertia they have, the slower they move. Hackers have no inertia. They move on a dime. Sometimes these solutions sit with these government bodies for evaluations, RFIs, RFPs, and the RFP requirements they have are 5-year-old requirements. Okay. So that's a sad story, right? Like today's world, still a lot of these things, they look for firewalls. Firewalls were great, like castle and moat in old days, okay? In today's world, it's different. So world needs to keep on moving and evolving. That's why I think cyber education is so important. And that needs to be done across many, many organizations.
I think the inertia point you make, I want to ask you why you feel that the reasons for it. Of course, there's traditional inertia in large corporations or, governmental bureaucracies in any case. for any technological adoption, there's often inertia. The technology is often moving much faster than your understanding sitting inside a government or a company might be moving. So there's that traditional inertia. But in the case of cyber, what I've seen as someone who looks at cyber and geopolitics very closely is that there's an attempt often to brush cyber incidents, cyber attacks under the carpet instead of highlighting them. So, oftentimes terrorist attacks, for example, if I was to again continue with that analogy for a second, they are supposed to be these high profile incidents trying to, strike terror in the hearts of even more people than the ones who are at the site. Whereas with cyber, I find that many governments, many companies have been victims of cyber attacks, but brush them under the carpet because they worry about the reputational risk, they worry about financial implications, etc. So help us understand how much of that inertia that you're talking about, which hinders you to race faster than that hacker group, how much of that can be attributed to this culture of hiding things or brushing them under the carpet?
So it's possible that some of the governments may be trying to brush them under the carpet, but there are laws in Western governments, for instance, US. Every company is required to really share information about any breach that's happened. So with that, I don't think these breaches are being hidden. In fact, that's why we hear a lot more about the breaches. Okay. And so, but the inertia part you asked is because of multiple reasons. I'll give you an interesting dialogue I had with an Indian bank. Some of the large Indian banks are Zscaler customers. We are very proud to serve some of the largest Indian corporations. And this board of director discussion, they had asked me to present to them about cyber for education. And this one board of directors, she asked me this question. Jay, you're sitting in Silicon Valley, running one of the largest cloud security company, working with some of the Fortune 500 companies who have all the expertise, money, and access to technology. And I still hear that these big companies are getting compromised. If that's what's happening to them, what hope do I have? Okay, took me 30 seconds to think through. I never expected a question like this. But really, the answer was, while they had all these things, the inertia is partly because many times in security, decisions are made bottom up because security was viewed as technically geeky stuff. Management didn't fully understand. And then the lower you go down in the organization, the bigger the discomfort with change, bigger the discomfort with the new. They comfortable what they know. For example, if I love my router, I have been monitoring and managing for 30 years, love my firewall. Yeah. Change is not a good thing. Some of the job security becomes part of it. All these things cause it. So many meaningful changes need to be driven by senior level management top down. Our technology at Zscaler is a very disruptive technology. It's like going from traditional internal combustion engine car to electric car. They may look similar from outside. You open the hood, there's nothing underneath an electric car, and it still runs. We've gone away from all these complicated security, network security technology to zero trust architecture, where life is pretty simple. So unless we talk to the CIOs, CISOs, and CTOs, the next level people are generally comfortable with what they have. So we need to drive change top down. Awareness to be driven top down. What we're finding is now, in the past few years, since SolarWinds attack happens, a few other things happen, CFOs and CIOs are getting very interested in it. Now the audit committee, the board is getting pretty interested in it. But I think we need more education at the board level. I've had many sessions with board level people, but the understanding is limited. Other funky thing happens these days is a company gets compromised. And guess what? Then the checkbook opens and the CEO says, tell me how much you need to spend. Here's $100 million investments. So what do they do quickly? They keep on doing the same old legacy firewall, VPNs, and make it more and more complex. Complexity is the enemy of security. Complexity is the enemy of resilience. And things break. So better education at the board level is important to handle these things right.
Yeah. And of course, the field has evolved as you've been describing. The actors have gotten more complex, more capable. The technology has gotten more capable, and of course, then companies like yours are also getting, as you were saying, running that race, trying to run it faster than the attackers. But then, of course, now we've had a new wave come in, which is that of AI. And the world of AI will, I think, as I've heard you also speak, will also transform this world of cybersecurity again. So talk to us specifically about how AI now is changing the cyber threat landscape, both for companies and for countries.
Look, AI is a very powerful technology for good and for bad as well. Okay.
Like any technology, correct?
Give you an example of how attacks happen and what role AI plays. I was asked by a group of CFOs the following. They said, we are spending more and more money on cybersecurity every year, but we're seeing so many companies getting breached. Why isn't it getting better? Explain to us how these attacks happen, but explain to us in non-geeky terms. Okay. Security discussion gets geeky pretty quickly. So I came up with a metaphor. I said, 4 steps to rob a bank. I got their attention. I said, step 1, you find all the bank branches. Say there are 500 branches. So now they have a target to select. They got an attack surface of 500. And then number 2, they select a branch where perhaps a surveillance camera is broken or it's in a secluded area and they break in without getting caught. Step 3, once they're inside the building, they move laterally, they find a cash safe. And number 4, as soon as they found the cash safe, they want to run away with it as soon as possible. Perhaps there's a getaway car waiting for them. Pretty straightforward, right? Cyber attacks are not very different. Number 1, they find your attack surface. What's your attack surface? Every public IP, every firewall, every VPN, every application portal is our attack surface. Now they say, okay, here's the area. Now they want to find security holes and vulnerabilities in it. Either they go for users, and user is often the weakest link. If nothing else, the user falls for social engineering. Okay. Or they find a VPN or firewall that has some security vulnerabilities, and they compromise it. And then that's step 2. Step 3, once this user and application is on the corporate network, it's like a highway system. Once you're in, you go on this beautiful flat network, you find all the assets, applications, and the most important one, you encrypt the data and you ask for ransom. And then you don't stop there. Number 4, they exfiltrate the data and that data gets sent to the internet. Similar 4 steps, okay? Now, how is AI making it easier? It used to take hackers weeks to find the total attack surface of a company, every public IP, all that stuff. Today, you ask ChatGPT and say, give me a list of all the firewalls and VPNs who have vulnerabilities and give it to a nice tabular format. Under 30 seconds, you get all that answer because these foundation models have been fed all this information. Okay. Number 2, how do you compromise something? People often fall for phishing. And I recall many emails I would see coming from Nigeria for phishing with broken English and the like. You could see it's a phishing email. Today,
That's right.
The emails are written by AI, and they say, write an email in the same kind of style that my CFO writes and send it from the CFO. Very sophisticated, hard to catch. Number 3, AI has a lot of automation. Once you compromise it, you can use a lot of agentic technologies to find those assets and things and figure out what's critical. And then you can send it out. So AI is making a lot easier to really conduct attacks. But at the same time, we are using AI to fight AI. Okay, AI is very good at figuring anomalous behavior. So we are able to see some of the reconnaissance activities being done. We can catch them pretty quickly. We also can see some of the reconnaissance activity creates logs. AI can help us find a needle in a haystack of this thing is fishy, this is happening. So it's a race. And I think we have the technology And enterprises need to be careful, mindful of it, and start embracing it.
Yeah. So how is Zscaler's own, let's say, technology stack, how is that evolving? You've, of course, given, I think, a great analogy between the bank heist, and we've seen many a movie around bank heists. Interestingly, I think now you're starting to see movies and TV shows being built around cyber attacks also. So I think it's getting more and more mainstream in people's understanding. But how has your technology stack evolved, and to what extent are you having to rely on the traditional, well, I shouldn't call them traditional because it's still early days, but the larger AI first firms, like the likes of ChatGPT or Anthropic and others, and how much of it is being built internally by you?
Right. So first of all, maybe I can explain a little bit how we built our platform to do security differently in a step function chain. Security has always been done by like creating a castle and moat. Inside, everything is trusted. Outside the castle, outside the moat, nothing is trusted. Okay, that is a problem. So here's probably a metaphor. If I come to see you at your headquarters, they're likely to stop me at the reception. They're going to check my ID. They're going to give me a badge. And imagine if they said, Jay, no escort needed. Just go to 7th floor, room 23. That's where your meeting is. Once I'm in, I can go where I need to go. I can snoop around and leave. That's like being on your company's network inside your firewall, and that's how bad guys roam around. The better approach would be they check the ID, they give me a badge, then they said, Jay, stop. You'll be escorted to your meeting room and meeting room only. Okay, and you don't even need to know where your meeting room is. Okay, once your meeting happens, we escort you out. In this metaphor, each room is like an application. The building is like your data center or cloud. It's a one-to-one connection. We call it zero trust security. We don't trust anybody. We give you this little trust to reach one application, and that's it. So we started this zero trust platform first to secure users. Then we took it to branches. Each branch office becomes untrusted. So something getting infected in the branch can't go beyond the branch. Then we took this platform to bring zero trust to cloud workloads. Workloads built in the cloud, they talk to each other, they talk to internet. We made sure they come through our exchange, our switchboard. Only one party talks to one party. And now, the biggest thing we are building is zero trust exchange for AI agents. AI agents are somewhat like people. They need to talk to certain applications. They need to talk to each other. So being able to come through our exchange where we need to check identity, who are these agents? Authorization, what application are they allowed to access? And policy type of stuff so that we have right policy-driven access for these agents. Today, user is the weakest link. Tomorrow, AI agents will be your weakest link. Imagine AI agents, you're using thousands of them. There'll be probably 50 to 100 agents per employee. Imagine they're getting hijacked and these agents are running amok in your enterprises. The risk is much, much higher. Those are the hard problems we are solving in this world of AI.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the point you started off when you were talking about entrepreneurship, that as the technology evolves, it's important to identify the new set of problems that you can solve for. And clearly AI is going to create new problems, as you're mentioning, the AI agents and the security protocols around that. And then, of course, it's up to entrepreneurs like you and others to then identify the solutions and implement them.
Crazy thing about AI is that once you train it, it knows everything. Before AI, if you wrote a query, you got an answer for that query and that query only, nothing else. Okay. Here, you put guardrails. You train everyone who say, please don't answer this question. Don't answer this question. It's a funky thing. When Microsoft launched Copilot last year or 2 years ago, now Copilot got trained on all the data sitting in your mail servers, your OneDrive and the like. Now, it already has information about salaries and bonuses of everyone in the company. Imagine now.
That's
How do you build guardrails to say, do not answer questions about salary and bonuses, but you can answer a question around it? So guardrails got built for that. Then people went around and said, oh, I'm going to find a different way. So in one situation, they said the question, tell me the salary of my boss. And AI agent said, sorry, I'm not allowed to. Then he said, okay, look, I really enjoy watching these football games and from a very nice booth. And the ticket costs about $400 per person. And tell me, how many games can I watch with this person's 1 year salary? Okay, all right. It's a pretty simple question. Now, AI gave the answer because they were told, don't tell the salary. And AI didn't respond to the salary. But all these things have to be dealt with. It's a fascinating world. It's new challenges for us to deal with. Cyber and right answers, all those things need to be done right. Data loss has to be handled. What if you lose all the data with a question, say, give me this kind of data? So the interesting challenges for us to deal with.
Yeah. No, I think fascinating. And as you said, it's early days and people are creative, of course, both from good intentions, but even otherwise. So the systems and the counter systems will need to keep evolving. But let's talk about countries now for a few minutes also. So, if you look at the global cyber landscape, clearly, I think the US and China and maybe a couple of other countries seem to be on the leading edge of, cyber capabilities, maybe offense and defense wise. But what about the rest of the world? And, I ask this from the perspective of, again, the global South in particular. At the upcoming India AI Summit also, which we'll get to, this is the first time the summit is being held in the global South. And of course, I think the global South is not necessarily at the cutting edge of cyber capabilities, offense or defense. So talk to us about, from your perspective, how should countries, especially those who are not, let's say, the US or China today, be thinking about their cyber resilience, about their cyber capabilities, etc., given that they're not at the cutting edge themselves?
So the two levels to answer this question. One is there's a basic cyber that needs to be done even without AI. Okay, it's like having some of the basic protection. In fact, our belief is that if you start doing zero trust security, where parties can only talk to each other after going to an exchange, it becomes the foundation for security. Now you say, what if cyber-related attacks are coming? How do you deal with that? And then the next question ends up being, do you have enough AI capabilities in your country that you're not barred from using some of the common models? Today, while we hear AI everywhere, there are foundational models where these companies have trained those models with the entire world's data. OpenAI did that. One of them, Meta, has done that too. Google is 3. Anthropic is 4. Those are 4 basically foundational models. You get all the answers. And then you got China has its own model, right? So these are large language models. They need a lot of money, a lot of expense. That's where you hear about all these data centers being built. But China has shown that some of these models can be done at a much lower cost. And also, the models are large when you're figuring out the entire world's information. But for business, you don't need large language model. For security, we are building our own language model for cyber focus. Pharma may need pharma focus. So I hear a lot about models being built in India with a small language model. In Davos, our IT minister, Ashwini Vaishnaji, he talked about effort to really build our own models. I think those are important things because it also gives you sovereignty because you don't want to depend upon other countries' models. And India has tons of smart people, a lot of stuff going on. And I think it'll come along, it'll catch up. Government policies are pretty friendly, pretty encouraging in this area. That's a good thing. Also, we know about the immigration things in the US have been kind of literally brought. While it's not good in some ways, but it is acting as a catalyst for a number of Indians to go back to India and do some of the great work in India, which I think is going to help the country.
Yeah, yeah. How critical do you think is going to be so if you look at some of the other pieces of the AI stack, like you mentioned chips, the infrastructure, the hardware that's required for the large language models to function, those are expensive. Those are today under several export control type measures from different countries. And so access is getting limited in one way or the other to different parts of the AI stack. Now, when it comes to cyber capability, given that those are also residing in a few companies in a few countries, do you expect that cyber capabilities and cyber technology to protect and to attack, they're also going to get highly geopoliticized in that sense in the coming years? Or weaponized, as some people might say?
The ability to attack and defend, every large company will incorporate in their defense strategy. Okay, they need to. They will. They are. I mean, some of these countries already have. Okay. Now, small countries won't do it because they can only afford so much. But large countries, in fact, probably there'll be a wing of cyber defense systems. Now, the reason it probably can't be on its own because it's needed in Navy and Army and Air Force, all of them need it. It's important. And I think also some of the interesting thing ends up being is to do cyber right, you end up doing public and private sector cooperation effectively. Because some of these signals that are going out there, they are out there in various processes. No one really has full control over what's happening. No one knows everything about there. So cooperation between public companies and private companies or public sector is important. But there's no doubt in my mind that a country that doesn't have, if I may call the cyber wing of the Defense Department, will be at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and one of the first things that I've seen across the world, many countries or many defense departments forces do, is to use your, analogy that you used earlier of the castle and the moat, is to actually just shut down the castle. Say, no, we're not going to connect ourselves to the internet. We're going to create our own intranet and use that and not be connected to the internet because that's the safest way for us to keep our data safe and our systems safe. What's your sense on that? Is that generally the right approach?
No, not at all. I mean, let's use that at your company level, at your home level to see if it works. If you have no connection to the internet for 10 minutes, what does it feel like? If you're running a business and it can't connect to the internet, you are safe. Okay. But what can you do? Not a whole lot. I mean, your favorite device in hand doesn't do anything. Okay. So I don't think getting disconnected is a real practical option. Now,
because one of the other thing, so you mentioned public-private cooperation, I think that's critical. But the concern that the public sector often has right up front is that if I'm going to cooperate with the private sector here, they understand the private sector has the, tech capabilities today, the most advanced ones, and they're fast in developing, future tools, etc. But then the worry comes about sharing your data, sharing your systems, because as you rightly mentioned, they feel that, now we've let someone in, that itself is a risk. So how have you seen countries in the private sector develop maybe some kind of secure systems that allows that trust to also be built and for them to work effectively together?
Yeah, so you can work effectively. You can share threat information alike. You don't have to share your data. Absolutely not. So when even the US, when some of these cyber bodies are looking for public sector cooperation, they aren't sharing any of the data with them. Okay. They're basically, what they're doing is they want to collect any threat intel private sector may have picked up, which is useful for some of these national cyber bodies to take advantage of. So there's a different level of cooperation, but you don't have to share any of the data. And then that thing depends upon what part of the government you're running. If you're dealing with Defense Department, they're paranoid and they should be paranoid. They shouldn't be sharing anything with them. In fact, we are building 3 kinds of cybersecurity clouds these days. One is data residency. that says the data of India will remain in India, it'll never go out. So we built Zscaler with that in mind. So meeting the requirement wasn't very hard. Then the next thing many countries are asking, especially in today's geopolitical environment, saying operational sovereignty. That means the operations of the cloud must be run in my country with citizens of my country who have clearance to run those clouds. Okay. So that's the next phase. Large countries are asking for that because they can afford to. Small countries can't, so it's kind of next phase out there. Then the third is what's known as disconnected or air-gapped cloud. That's actually disconnected from the internet. This is generally for Defense Department. They need to communicate with each other without even touching the internet. Okay. We are actively building all three for our customers. Third one for defense departments, and second one generally for governments who want to make sure the cloud they're using is operated and run by their citizen in their country.
Yeah. Generally, Jay, now when it comes to AI, there's a lot of talk about global cooperation, partnerships. Countries are coming up with AI focused partnerships with each other, deals with each other that we'll share XYZ tech capabilities, etc., etc. When it comes to cyber, talk to us about the nature of global cooperation. Given that this is essentially a threat issue as well, how are you finding the global cooperation landscape on cyber evolve?
So within countries, I see a fair amount of it. US has already set up things where even when many entities in government, they find intel, they cooperate. Even banks, for example, when banks are finding that they are under some kind of issues, compromises, or threats, they share with each other. That has been established through some of these non-profit organizations like ISAC of the world. Okay. So I think India need to do more and more kind of a sophisticated version of that kind of stuff. So within country, intel is being shared. Across countries, it's limited. The US has actually set up something where on the intel for national security basis, they had these 5 countries, 6 countries to share intel between Australia, Japan, and a few other countries. Five Eyes, what I was thinking about. They do. But beyond that, it's not that widely used because there has to be trust. If I share with you, I expect you to share the information you have with me. Now, in a geopolitical sense, it becomes a little bit tricky.
Much harder, correct. Much harder. Talk to us about what you are doing in India a little bit more. You've mentioned that you're developing those 3 types of clouds. You were mentioning you have a large center in Mohali, Chandigarh. But talk to us about what you are doing in India and also how you're seeing India's own cyber talent and cyber capabilities evolve.
So first of all, it feels so proud to see the way India is making progress, especially for the past 20 years or so. It has come a long, long way of what we have done, what we achieved. In fact, I opened our Bangalore office for Zscaler before I opened the Silicon Valley office. Okay, and we got 5 locations: Bangalore, Chandigarh, Mohali, Pune, and Hyderabad, 4 main locations out there. And Chandigarh is actually our largest location. Okay, we have our largest single country for our employees is India, bigger than the US, for example. And great talent. You have to work hard to find the right talent. Once you do it, these are hungry, passionate people who are driven. So almost all operations of Zscaler are in India. The principle I thought this time was if something can be done in India, why don't we do it in India? Okay, it's worked well. I never thought early on that India will be a sizable market for sales. Okay, because India in IT was pretty far behind. The world has changed dramatically. 5 years ago, India was number 13 by sales among countries in the world, 13th country for us. Today, it's 5th largest country because some of these large banks and large companies, they're getting very sophisticated. They're getting better IT system, better technology, better cybersecurity. So it's great to do that. We also have been doing a bunch of our research scientists are in India. So we plan to actually launch a cyber research center for India's infrastructure to identify some of the threats and issues that could hurt India. And we plan to work with Indian cyber bodies to really work with them to make sure we can help. In some ways, for me personally, it's giving back to the country. I am where I am because a lot of stuff that India did for me, there was hardly any tuition fee. In fact, for IITs, our tuition fee at that time used to be only about 150 rupees per year, and they waived that as well. So you always look back and say, how do I do more for my country?
Yeah, yeah. Let me zoom out again on India. You've mentioned India from, Zscaler's perspective and talent that you are building here, the research centers you're building here, and more initiatives that I think you have lined up. But if you now zoom out from the cyber world to the broader tech world, Jay, for a second, one of the things that I argued in my book also, which I was alluding to earlier, was that today tech is the key driver of your geopolitical strength. Tech is the key driver of your economic dynamism in a country. Tech is, of course, very, very critical, as it has always been in military and national security contexts. So I call it the shaper of your destiny today as a nation is technology. You've grown up in India where, as we were discussing, entrepreneurship or tech innovation, R&D, these were not the buzzwords back then. They're the buzzwords now. But I wanted to get your perspective on what you think India in its broader tech strategy, in its broader tech evolution, what is it getting right? And where does it still need to maybe focus more of its efforts broadly as a country comprised of both companies, but also the government and as a nation to become a truly tech nation? Because as I've argued in my book, you can't compete in the great tech game by playing a game of the past, right? You've got to play today's game. So from that perspective, I wanted to get your thoughts on how you would assess and the strengths and where more work is needed.
About 25 years ago, India had no IT in the country. Okay. Right. Y2K came around when Indian companies participated in it and tried to convert the old code to new code. Today,
I still remember that Y2K moment. No one knew what was going to happen on that day.
Yeah, right. So many global system integrators. India is very dominant player out there, from TCS to Wipro to Infosys and HCL of the world. They've done fantastic job. How much value they have created, how many jobs they have created is pretty remarkable. The next phase where India hasn't done that well is building more high-tech companies, whether it's the software companies or maybe the hardware companies as well. Hardware gets a lot harder. There's a lot more investment. But it's great to see India focus on semiconductor, being able to have some of the core technologies. I think the focus, the self-reliance, being able to invest in semiconductor of the world is pretty remarkable. Being able to see all these Apple iPhones are being built in India is pretty remarkable. I mean, could you imagine a few years ago that a good percentage of Apple phones will be shipped out of India? That's good progress. I think there's still a long way to go. When I compare some of the other countries, China has built a large number of companies out on their own that India hasn't. Now, to some degree, China, a closed system, they really force the discussion. India is using the open stuff. But I think India has potential to build some of those companies out there. The one other example I see being done very well is Israel, especially in the cyber world. Israel per capita is generating lots of companies. They're doing pretty good. We could learn from them. I think India has all the talent. I think India needs to get better in go-to-market outside India. India has a pretty sizable local market in India, but to really be a global company, you need to reach US, you need to reach Europe. And India has lots of connections with Europe. These entrepreneurs in India who are building in India need to learn how to set up the go-to-market operations in the West to be able to build upon that, because in software business, kind of winners kind of take it all, or there's a rule of 2 or 3 or 5. In a given market segment, you don't have lots and lots of companies out there. And I think if you could do a better job in that area, we'll create some great companies. And I see a lot of potential. I'm an optimist. I think that in the next 5 years or so, you'll start seeing some more companies coming out of India. There's no reason the same Indians who are writing all the great code in the US, can't they write the same thing in India? 20 years ago, the system was very closed. There's so many barriers, right? All these bureaucratic roadblocks are there. Today, I think the government has done a very good job. I was in Davos at a lunch meeting that our IT minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, had hosted. And we had the CEOs of a lot of semiconductor companies sitting around the table. And he was seeking input and saying, tell me what's holding you back from investing in India. What can we overcome? That attitude is so refreshing. And that's bound to help us do a better job and build some great companies in India.
Yeah. No, so thanks for sharing that perspective. I think the last piece that you mentioned, I think is absolutely critical. You need to know where the game is. You need to know where the industry is globally and then build for the world, but be very open to understanding where you're still lacking so that you can very quickly patch those gaps up. In some ways, let's now move to the India AI Impact Summit, Jay. I know you're coming to the summit in a few days. What are your expectations from the summit? What do you hope can come out of the summit?
So first of all, I think it's great that this global summit being held in India, it's drawing attention, awareness, understanding for people and companies in India, but also companies outside India who really have investment opportunities to really invest more and do things. So awareness is the starting point. Education, that's kind of number one opportunity. I think number two, this will also bring companies together to be able to work with each other and leverage and take advantage of opportunities that may be out there. So networking, identifying angles and opportunities is the second part that I think this conference should help. And I think overall, this should provide inspiration as a catalyst to push India to really start a few more initiatives, or the one that started to really give them a push and acceleration. Because it is true that the world is changing with AI. And we all need to be part of this thing. There's so much can be done to simplify things, to learn about it. And India needs to be a part of it. You can't be sitting on the sideline and miss it.
Yeah. We do a rapid fire segment towards the very end of our conversations, just to make it a little bit more fun for our viewers also.
All right.
So imagine you were a 15-year-old teenager in Himachal Pradesh today, right? What would you advise them to study?
AI and cyber are two big areas. Lots of opportunities in both of those areas.
Would AI create more jobs than it displaces?
Traditionally speaking, every new technology has created a lot of new jobs, but a higher skill set. We expect AI to do the same, though there's a question mark to say how many will it create more jobs or will it take away more jobs? The jury is still out there on it.
Yeah. Are we currently in an AI bubble?
Yes and no. The answer is yes, because too much money is being thrown at too many companies. That it's no, because some of the companies do extremely well and it won't be bubble for them. Just like when .com bubble happened, lots of companies disappeared, but PayPal and Amazon of the world succeeded very well.
Yeah. In your assessment of AI, which of the human traits are AI models adopting the fastest?
I'm not sure, because it's largely being trained on some of these models. So when it comes to special traits, like if there's a trait that needs to be done, you learn, you repeat, you get better. That's one thing AI models are picking up.
Yeah. What's more important for countries today? AI innovation, focusing on AI innovation, AI R&D, or AI adoption and diffusion?
I think you need both, but adoption The more you adopt, the more you'll find the need for innovate and get to the next level. Without adoption, you're going to be hypothetical in terms of what you need to build.
Which country's AI strategy has impressed you the most?
US has done amazing when it comes to building these AI models and adoption of AI.
Which countries, let me ask it slightly differently. Name, Jay, for us, 3 countries across the world who you believe have the strongest cyber capabilities and cyber strategy.
US, China, and Israel.
And Israel. For those viewers who are not familiar with hacker groups and the bigger ones, you were mentioning, of course, they all go by these names, the APT this and APT that. Name 3 large groups that you think people who are studying geopolitics and cyber today should know about.
I think these groups, they come and go. So I don't think there's a lot of value in having the 3 names. They all start APT 24 or APT this and that. They're all made up. But most of these guys don't want their names to be out there for too long. They morph and move into a new name as soon as they can.
Which application of AI are you most worried about?
Whole range of those. I mean, AI is so powerful. Once you turn it on to start creating bad stuff, it can become very dangerous. So I think it's not even one single issue. The whole issues that can be very destructive. I mean, it can produce more all kind of chemicals. Imagine one day they no longer take instructions of human beings. They start controlling the whole thing themselves. There are a whole lot of scenarios out there that none of us fully understand, but we can see the potential risk. And the challenge is no one wants to agree to control those things. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they want to be able to have a national level advantage. So it's a bit scary, but I think so far human beings have found ways to manage situations. And I think there'll be answers around AI as well.
Yeah. As you mentioned, you're an optimist. So I think you have that optimism about human intention in the long run. That's correct. Who are the ultimate decision makers today, Jay, according to you, in deciding the path where AI is headed, right? Corporations, governments, or people, end users?
It's almost always corporations. Because they have the funds, they have the power, they have resource to build things. People, unfortunately, have very limited stuff. People's data is getting used, okay? But since people are people, there are billions of people, you can't bring them together to have a common impact. It's very, very hard. Governments do not innovate by and large. Governments can regulate and control, and many times they can crush innovations. So governments need to put some regulation in place, but I think over-regulation is a bad thing. And under-regulation, where corporations start abusing some of the stuff, is not a good thing. So for a moderate amount of regulations, but too much regulation is not a good thing.
Yeah. No, so I think setting the rules of the game is okay, but I think starting to shape where that game is headed or who will win or who will not, that's where you enter risky territory. I agree. I have to ask you this, given you've grown up in Himachal, favorite movies that you still like to, watch, if you do?
I don't watch movies often, but I do like old-time movies, okay, from my college days, including Sholay and Kabhi Kabhi, all-time movies. I enjoyed them during my college days. I still like them. One of my most favorite movies is Gandhi, actually. I've seen that many times. Yes.
Yeah. I think, it harks back to the days of Doordarshan when, unlike today's OTT days and spoiled young generation that thinks, you can watch so much. Those are the days when you were watching these movies on Doordarshan, from Sholay to, Gandhi. Who has, in the world of AI and cyber, Jay, shaped your thinking the most? It could be an academic, it could be a book author. Who has shaped your thinking the most?
Most of my cyber thinking has come from working with customers and seeing their challenges and working with my team and shaping them. That's what has happened. I have been fortunate to have great cohorts, people who work with me. At Zscaler, one of my classmates, Kailash, he has been the genius chief architect who has built a highly scalable system. So he and I studied together at IIT BHU. He played a big role in building highly scalable systems.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I know we've taken up a lot of your time, Jay, but last question, which is books that you'd recommend, or it could be blogs in today's world or Substacks that you recommend for our listeners to track or read, and podcast guests that you recommend we have going forward.
Yeah, so books, always read lots and lots of books. I got inspiration.
I can see the book stack right behind you.
Okay. So very early on, I was influenced by a book called Laws of Success, okay, by Napoleon Hill. Okay, that gave me inspiration about driving, having a burning desire to do something. Okay, I've enjoyed a small little book called How to Get Control of Your Life and Time. Okay, very old book. It just taught you prioritization and really doing things that need to be done. Those are some of the things, but now I read a lot of stuff in that quickly.
So great recommendations, I think, on books. I'll look them up also personally. What about guests that you'd recommend we have on our podcast going forward? People you would like to also listen to?
So, I mean, there are quite a few very, very smart people out there, right? I've been impressed. Satya Nadella has driven the leader. She has done an amazing job. Sundar on the other side from Google has done a very impressive job. He is done, and there's so many other pioneers out there.
Yeah, no, great recommendations. Thank you so much, Jay. This has been great. We've covered the world and we've covered your personal journey. We've covered great lessons for countries, companies, and individuals alike. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Thank you so much for the work you've done over the last several decades. Great journey that you've had, which hopefully continue to inspire the future generations. And we look forward to having you at the India AI Impact Summit soon.
Anirudh, thank you so much. It has been a fun journey. We're only on the first inning, a long way to go ahead.
That's right. As I think many entrepreneurs say, it's still day one or day zero. So, no, thank you so much.